Well, as the European Union seeks to formulate its response to Donald Trump's threats over Greenland, just how much is the unpredictable nature of the man himself complicating the issue? Norway has released the text of an exchange between Prime Minister Jonas Gahr and the US President. In the released text, Donald Trump says the pursuit of peace is less important than securing Greenland for his country. Now, Trump said, considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace, although it will always be predominant, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America. The world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland. Thank you, President DJT. Marisol Maddox is a security analyst at the Institute of Arctic Studies and a leading expert on Arctic geopolitics. She joins us from Hanover, New Hampshire. Welcome to DW. So we have a national leader now linking his personal grievance, not being awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, to a major geostrategic dispute. How does something like that, how does behaviour like that affect trust, crisis management, and the ability of allies to know how to react?
Yeah, so I think the word that you use that's really key is personal, right? We're seeing a high level of personalization with this issue. This recent letter about the Nobel Peace Prize just follows up a statement that was made by President Trump on January 11th, saying that he would feel psychologically better to own Greenland. So it's becoming very clear that this is not actually about the purported security threats that had initially been claimed, which makes this a much more complicated situation. And it's additionally compounded by the way that security and economic concerns are all kind of tied together, as opposed to being treated in like separate circumstances. So this is really just a very challenging situation. We've seen that President Trump is not interested in off-ramps, in de-escalating. I mean, first and foremost, this situation was entirely avoidable and unnecessary to start with. So this is really showing that Congress is more essential than ever because of how things are escalating and how incredibly consequential this is for U.S. security.
That's interesting. You see Congress as being the only lever that can be pulled to stop the US president acting like a Bond villain in this situation.
Congress has an essential role and a duty and an obligation to the American people to not allow these circumstances to further evolve in a way that is incredibly compromising to Americans' security. But then, Europe also has a very important role here, right? They need to show that they will stand firm, that they can, really deter further aggression from the United States. And so, it's this kind of balancing act. We have the internal dynamics in the U.S., but then internationally with Europe. I think they're handling it very well with sending troops to Greenland in response to President Trump saying that he was concerned about Russian and Chinese activity and concerned about threats to Greenland. So they sent the reconnaissance mission. Denmark has already announced billions of dollars of game-changing defense investments in Greenland. So, this is really about right-sizing the threat and not forgetting the fact that Chinese and Russian military cooperation is continuing to expand in the Arctic, and that's very concerning.
So help us out here. What you said in there was that the US president's actions were compromising to American security, where he says that his actions are essential for US national security. Outline for us why what the president's doing goes against what he says he's doing.
Because our allies are essential to asserting U.S. interests in the Arctic. It's not a region where you can just go it alone. One of the major issues from a security standpoint is all domain awareness, right? Being able to deal with the issues of satellite coverage that cuts out and really challenging communications in the Arctic. Being able to detect from space to the seabed any type of activity or threat, being able to track that, being able to deter any type of aggression, and then to defend against it if we need to. The way that adversary capabilities have developed means that we have to work together. It's a very complicated threat environment right
But
now.
let me push back from a Trumpian point of view on that and tell you that the United States is the greatest military power on this earth. We can do everything you just said there by ourselves, from the space to the sea. All we have to do is own Greenland. If we own Greenland, we can do all of that, keep the United States safe, keep the world safe.
I mean, that's just not borne out by facts. We have a very generous 1951 defense agreement with the Kingdom of Denmark for Greenland. That gives us an incredible amount of leeway in terms of anything that we would want to have on Greenland for security. So to destroy the alliance or the credibility of the alliance for the purpose of supposedly pursuing security it's preposterous. I mean, it's not, like I said, it's not borne out by facts. It's not a realistic reflection of, the ability of the United States to continue to do well.
Okay.
And this is really something that the level of unintended consequences here is so vastly underappreciated. I can't really emphasize that enough.
I think unintended consequences are what we now realise we are in for the next 4 years or so. But let me finish with this question. If this is not about US security, what is it about? And might it be about the fact that President Trump prefers the crisis to happen because sustained confrontation and chaos is itself the goal?
So I think this kind of goes back to what we were discussing at the beginning about this personalization. I think when you hear the way that President Trump talks about even the MAGA movement, he says, MAGA is me, right? So it's very much about him securing his legacy. He wants to be the guy who made the biggest land deal for America. He wants to go down in history as this figure that, he views as just, not caring about what anybody thinks, basically subjugating the entire hemisphere to his will, subjugating the major institutions, showing that he is extrajudicial. And that to him is about power, right? And securing for his family and his inner circle all of the riches, and then basically making it so that any kind of resistance to that would not be able to coalesce to be able to really fight back.
Good talking to you. Thanks for talking us through that. Marisol Maddox from the Institute of Arctic Studies.
Thank you.